caring folks of that wonderful republic that we now have a sister city relationship. So Micah, come on up and tell us about your experience in Azerbaijan.
Oh man, it's such a pleasure to be here today to talk about something I'm so passionate about, something that I've spent a lot of my life spending time with. Celebrate the 94th anniversary when Azerbaijan became a democratic secular republic, as we've heard. It's also an honor to welcome Azerbaijan's new Consulate General, Mr. Nasimi Aghayev, to his post in Los Angeles and Monterey this week. Hoş gelmişsiniz, Janab Aghayev. When Shafaq first gave me the topic of the talk today, I began thinking about what Azerbaijan is like to non-Peace Corps volunteers. And I came up with 5 things that I think people would recognize about Azerbaijan if they've read about it in the news, if they've talked about it with somebody, or even if they've been there. The first thing was mentioned just a little earlier by Mayor Della Sala. The mayor. He said it. I'll get that right. And that's that Azerbaijan is a very strategic geopolitical ally, and not just of America, but of Europe and a lot of other countries. It's positioned literally at the crossroads of modern civilization today. It's the only country in the world that borders both Russia to the north and Iran to the south. It's a strategic ally to Europe, just to the west, also to Turkey. And now they're looking to the east, where China is coming up strong, and they're developing diplomatic relations with China and especially Japan. For this reason, I don't envy the politicians from Azerbaijan. They must play a very political balancing act in that region. But I think that they're doing a good job. And Consulate General, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been told that Azerbaijan has the most foreign embassies per capita of any nation in the world. I think that's a good statistic. And just recently, as we heard, Azerbaijan became a non-permanent member of the Security Council of the United Nations. So congratulations. Another thing you may have heard about Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan is one of the leading energy providers in the world. And for Europe, it's the most strategic provider, as it's a non-Arab, non-Russian, and non-OPEC oil provider to their markets. And soon natural gas is going to be exported in higher quantities through potential pipeline. They're still debating which one, but they're going to be developing the Shah Deniz field in the Caspian Sea for that. Third thing you may have heard about Azerbaijan, they have a lot of wealth right now. Since the year 2005, the nation's GDP has tripled in size. Imagine the US economy tripling in size in the same period. Astronomical. For this reason, the capital city of Baku has gone through a tremendous transformation. In the years that I was there between 2008 and just this last January, the city was completely different than the day that I arrived. I didn't even recognize it. New buildings, new structures, and just recently they hosted Europe's premier Eurovision Song Contest, which was available online if you'd like to see it. And they have a new structure called Crystal Hall, which took only 8 months to construct. And this is astronomically fast. They're working 24 hours a day. I saw it in the process. I wish I could see it when it was done. Fourth thing you may have heard is that Azerbaijan is a very moderate Muslim republic, very tolerant. This is primarily populated by Shia Muslims, and their Islamic community is one that shows tolerance to all different kinds of faiths and beliefs in the region. Me being there, I never once got any problems for being an American. And this is something that I know that a lot of my compatriots were nervous about going to a Muslim republic, and we quickly found out that they are not what we saw as a stereotypical Muslim republic, in our opinion, before we went. And so we're very happy to see that they were very kind to us. So, all that said, these are external views of the country. These are things that you can see from the news, the media. But as a Peace Corps volunteer, we get to experience the country from the inside out. We get to see things that even Azerbaijanis themselves don't see in their own nation. We get to spend time with people in the rural communities, outside of the cities. Azerbaijan's city of Baku is home to almost half of the entire population. There's an urbanization movement happening there. But it's in the regions that we see the most diverse and the most traditional types of culture that Azerbaijan should be and will be famous for, I believe. So in preparation for today, I decided to ask my fellow Peace Corps volunteers before I came to describe for me what is the most memorable thing that they remember from their service there. And to do so using only one word, which is quite a challenge. I'm using many words. I made them do it in one. And I'm going to read for you a few of their responses. Family, kindness, warmth, simplicity, fiery, as in emotions, also the land of fire, guesting, love, friends. One volunteer said, wonderful woman that befriended me. So I made her shorten it down. She just said women. Another one said identity, pride, reality, community, growth, fascinating, and finally, inshallah, which means God willing. And reading through these responses, I realized that I was able to relate to every one of them. Each one brought a memory or a feeling from my own service there. And then it hit me. The majority of the answers I were getting were about the people, the culture, the personal relationships. It wasn't about oil or economy. And I realized that as Americans, we get to come in pretty much like aliens and see things without any prior biases, any expectations, and witness firsthand, from an outsider's perspective, what Azerbaijan really is like. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own experience, and then I'm going to close. When I first left for Azerbaijan, I'll be honest, I was expecting to see a sort of backwater post-Soviet republic, something with buildings that were crumbling and infrastructure that was out of repair. When we arrived the first night, I was still in a haze, so I didn't really see anything. But when I woke the next morning, I saw that we were staying in a massive hotel resort on the seacoast, complete with water slides, a game room, table tennis, and more. It was miles better than what we just left in Philadelphia the day before. And it blew away my expectations. And for the rest of the service, we didn't stay in places like that. But I think Peace Corps put us there in the hotel for our first 3 days to sort of ease us into that environment. And I'm glad that they did. But I quickly learned two things in those first 3 days in that hotel from my Azerbaijani teachers. The first was that my name, Micah, literally means undershirt in Russian. Mira's laughing, she knows all about that. The second thing I learned is that my home state of Utah was not well known in Azerbaijan, and it took a long time to explain where it was on the map. So I quickly changed my identity, and I became Mike from California. And I used this alter ego the entire Peace Corps service. And it served me well, especially because when I'd mentioned California, everyone would, first reaction, say, Arnold Schwarzenegger, as he was governor during the time that I was there. And this led to very good conversations, and the Russian word for governor is gubernator. So it's very, very good for Arnold Schwarzenegger. During Peace Corps, in my service, I spent 3 years in the northern region of Gusar. It's the opposite end of Lankaran that our sister city is with. It sits right on the border with Russia to the north, high up in the Caucasus Mountains, and it's consistently one of the coolest places in the country, which is nice in the summer, very bitter cold in the winter. It's primarily home to a national minority group called Lezgis. These people are known for their hard characters and their brutal honesty, something they inherited from the very mountains that they live in. I lived there with a host family for nearly my entire stay. The family consisted of a man and his wife and their 14-year-old son. The man was a wrestling coach in a nearby community. He'd been teaching wrestling for over 30 years. He taught in Kazakhstan, and then he taught in Azerbaijan. His wife, Zanura, I like to call Big Mama, which she loved. And she grew up in the village and prided herself on being tough. Nobody crossed Big Mama. She used to mock the weak women of the world and laugh at how they couldn't lift 50-pound bags of flour over their shoulder and cart them home from the bazaar, which I found funny because I knew I probably couldn't do that either. Yashar, the son, was a 14-year-old, and he quickly became my little brother. I'm proud to say that he now speaks fluent English. He'll be taking an exam this fall to try and study here in America with a program called Flex. During my time there, I learned some of the local language, which is called Lezgi. It's a very guttural sound. It's a very hard language of the mountains. I began enjoying some of the food, and I started to admire their dance. The Lezgis share a dance called Lezginka, which is very popular in the northern Caucasus areas. I'm sure that you've seen a lot of that. I call it the chicken dance. I'll get there. I call it the chicken dance because you literally look like a rooster with your chest puffed out if you do it right. It's a male dance, and it's primarily performed at weddings. It was every self-respecting Lezgi man needed to know Lezginka if he was going to attract a mate. So weddings gave these men the opportunity to show off their dancing skills, and during a village wedding, it would go well on into the night with young men dancing and young girls standing around the outside of this. So naturally, I had to learn this dance. And so Shafag told me that I'm here to entertain you today as the keynote speaker. So instead of doing a song and dance, I decided to just do a dance. So I'm going to teach you a little bit of Lezginka. Torso needs to stay completely stiff as you're dancing, with your legs moving, all right? The second thing is that your arms must be straight, okay? There can be some bending here and there, but by and large, you need to be like a tin soldier when you're doing it. So they keep their legs out here. And if you can keep this pose and move your legs at the same time, you can do Lezginka. So there's some very easy steps, all right? So, and I'll count in Russian because that's how I learned. So the first thing that you do is один, два, три, четыре. Yeah? All right? I have no music. This is a lesson. So, один, два, три, четыре. Один, два, три, четыре. To say that I'm now engaged to a lovely Lezgi girl. As you can see, it has absolutely nothing to do with the dancing, but nevertheless, we're engaged. Outside of the weddings, my life continued there. Life in Azerbaijan moves a lot slower than it does here. It's a very leisurely pace. No hustle and bustle. Never once did I feel unsafe in this country. That was something that really stuck out to me. Even when I was in the big city of Baku, I would walk the streets at night. Not once did I feel in danger. Bartering with cab drivers began to be a form of entertainment eventually. Explaining to them that, yes, I'm an American, but I'm a very poor American, generally didn't work very well. And when my bargaining wasn't working, hitchhiking was always an option. In Azerbaijan, I'm happy to say, hitchhiking is still a generally accepted form of transportation, something you don't see here anymore. Once a friend and I hitchhiked all the way up to a mountain village named Laza. And for about 20 minutes, we got to stand on the back of a dump truck looking over the cab as we were racing up the mountainous dirt track. And it was one of my favorite experiences. It was clear by the end of year 3, I was nearing what our main office would probably call going native. And I enjoyed sipping tea with my friends at the local chaihana, sharing evening meals with my host family. And sometimes I'd even get confused for being Lezgi. This was my proudest moments. Once when I left our town, we traveled to a neighboring town. I was talking with a woman there, and I told her that I was an American. After that, she looked at me really closely. She said, "You look Lesgy." To which I replied, "Thank you." And without missing a beat, she said, "It wasn't a compliment." Apparently, Lesgies are not known for their good looks. So when it was finally time for me to come home this past January, I remember sitting with my host family and having a talk. And I told them, first of all, that I would be back. So this wasn't goodbye. And then I told them about what they truly meant to me. And I can honestly say for the first time ever, I really understood what it meant to love after being with them for so long. And you know, when a volunteer first comes to a country, they believe that they're going to develop that place. But I saw from my own experience that Azerbaijan served to develop us Peace Corps volunteers much more than we developed them. And I left the place knowing how to open my heart to people since they first opened it to me. So, to answer Shafak's question of what Azerbaijan is in the eyes of a Peace Corps volunteer, I'll tell you myself. It's my fiancée Ulker's smile. It's Zanura's warm soup on a cold day. It's wrestling with Yashar in the living room. It's the personal relationships I formed in that country, which is what it makes it to me. This is the side of Azerbaijan I would like to share with every one of you here. Simply visiting Azerbaijan is not enough. There needs to be a way to interact with the locals, to experience their local culture, and to see what we Peace Corps volunteers see. And what a wealth there is to see. As far as cultures and languages represented in Azerbaijan, Lezgi is just one of many. There's roughly 90% of the country which is ethnic Azerbaijani, but there are also large pockets of other cultures and other people groups. Georgians have a large population. There are many Russians in the country. Jews have their own village in Guba that they've lived at for over 2,000 years. It's the largest Jewish settlement outside of Israel in the world. And they live at peace with the Azerbaijanis. Many groups that you've never heard of. Talish, which live in Lankaran and just to the west of Lankaran. Khunalug, Urdu, Lahujian, Urtul, Tsakhur, and Avars. These are all people groups, some of them living in only one village high up in the mountains and sharing a unique language spoken nowhere else in the world. This diverse mix of groups and the traditions and languages they hold is fascinating to explore. But there were three things every person, every ethnicity, and every village shared. First was a love for Azerbaijan. They loved their nation. They were all very proud to be Azerbaijani. Second is that they had pride in their homeland. And the last thing is that they all shared a hospitality and a warmth. I didn't see any change in the entire country in those three things. So in an attempt to share our knowledge of Azerbaijan with others, in 2011, I teamed up with another Peace Corps volunteer. We created a business. As Sam Farr would say, we invented, as Monterey is good for. We invented community-based tourism Azerbaijan. And our tagline was, get to know the real Azerbaijan. We offered customers just that, the real Azerbaijan, complete with homestay accommodation, home-cooked meals, cultural activities, hiking tours, and more. We started it in only 2 communities, and we saw that it was very popular with the expat community in Baku and foreign backpackers who were traveling through, and we quickly expanded to 8 communities within our first season. The best thing of all was that the revenues that we gained through that were going back into each community where we worked. In our first year, we raised over $7,000 for local families, purely on selling homestay accommodation to people. This semester, I worked on a plan with Professor Kropp, who's here today, to expand this effort further and link it with the booming tourism that's happening just across the border into Georgia. My team and I are now looking for support and funding to make that happen. So now I hope all of you can visit Azerbaijan someday. If you never get over to Azerbaijan, however, I urge you all to consider one thing. If you're an American, I ask you to consider serving in the Peace Corps. I know some in this audience have done that. Congressman Sam Farr was a Peace Corps volunteer. Larry Levine is here today. He was in the Peace Corps. I'm still working on getting Nancy Selfridge in the Peace Corps. once she's done being a city councilwoman, perhaps. The reason I say this is because you will return with such a deep perspective of the world that no textbook, media report, map, journal, or even a speech that you're hearing today can duplicate. In fact, I now advise soon-to-be volunteers with one thing. Do not bring any expectations. Leave them at home. Because no matter what expectations you come with, they'll be wrong. And no matter how much difference you want to make in the world, the one thing that changes the most will be yourself. Thank you.
Yeah.
You got it right. I was nervous.
Oh, you did fine. Great.